of Management Studies, IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course MMPC-001 Management Functions and Organizational Processes for MBA program. Presenting Block 2 Managerial Processes 1 Unit-4 Planning Part-1.
After completing this unit, you should be able to understand the meaning of planning as a management function, characteristics of planning function, how planning process takes place, and merits and demerits of planning function and various types of planning. Introduction. The basic and primary aim of management is to solve the problem effectively, efficiently, and creatively owing to a highly competitive and dynamic working environment. Principles of management have long been discussed to help the managers to solve their short-term as well as long-term business problems. Due to this, principles of management have been categorized into 4 basic functions, namely planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. That is POLC framework. These integrated and highly essential functions of an organization ensures the smooth functioning of business enterprises on a day-to-day basis and developing a strong foundation for long-term survival and growth. Other academics and business gurus have ramified these management functions like planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. No matter what the bifurcation is, planning is the first and most crucial function that needs to be performed for the effective functioning of other management functions. This unit explains in detail about planning as a management function. Planning is done by managers at all levels of organization. You will see that all managers plan through the character and breadth of planning may differ at different levels of organization. For example, while an assistant engineer at a work site plans for the accomplishment of work at his site from day to day or for 2 or 3 days in advance, the chief project manager must plan for the whole project over a larger period of time. Similarly, a multinational company's top management must plan over a longer time frame for a worldwide market. Planning is a means to some end, as such involves choices among alternatives, alternative goals, alternative programs, and alternative means of achievement. What alternative to choose gives rise to decision making, which every manager will be required to do. Question: do you plan your day? How? Do you plan for your holidays or vacations? How and why? Have you actively participated in the planning of some big event like the annual function of your college or the marriage of a female relative of yours? Recapitulate how the event was planned. If you have given thought to these questions, you must have sensed the need for planning any activity whatsoever. Planning is considered important because it attempts to offset uncertainty by foreseeing the future and bringing about preparedness for the happenings in future. In this way, it minimizes the chances of mistakes. It focuses attention on the objectives or goals of the organization and their attainment. It leads to economy in operation through the selection of the best possible course of action. It helps in controlling the activities by providing measures against which performance can be evaluated. And it helps in coordinating the operations of an enterprise, since a well-considered plan embraces and unifies all the division of an enterprise. Meaning of planning. Nothing can affect the success and failure of a business more than the planning function of an enterprise. The globalized and highly dynamic work environment strives for effective planning and its management. This crucial dictum is highly recognized, and its fuller assimilation can only be possible with the understanding of what is meant by planning. Planning is the management function initiates with setting business objective and determining various courses of actions to achieve stated objectives. A successful and efficient business manager scans the environmental conditions of the business organization and forecasting future business conditions. Scanning and predicting future business environment requires a manager to be far-sighted and a good decision maker. Planning is a two-way process of looking back to derive future course of action. This preparatory step is systematic and scientific as it follows an order of what, when, how, and whom a specific job would be carried out. It is a detailed and comprehensive blueprint of organizational functioning in future. Planning involves a thorough examination of an organization's available physical as well as human resources to coordinate and contribute towards organizational activities. This basic management function involves developing a detailed organizational plan to balance between needs and demands of organizational resources and achieving organizational results thereof. Erwick stated that, and I quote, "Planning is a mental predisposition to do things in an orderly way, to think before acting, and to act in the light of facts rather than guesses." Unquote. It is a mental process of selecting the best of alternative resources to achieve organizational goals following predetermined standards. In words of Coons and O'Donnell, and I quote, "Planning is deciding in advance what to do, how to do, and who is to do it. Planning bridges the gap between where we are to where we want to go. It makes possible things to occur which would not otherwise occur." Unquote. Features of planning. Number 1. Planning focuses on achieving objectives by deciding upon the activities to be undertaken. Number 2. Planning is a primary function as it precedes all functions of management, that is, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. Number 3. Planning is pervasive as it is required at all levels of management, but its scope may vary. Number 4. Planning is a continuous process as plans need to be made on a continuous basis till an organization exists. Number 5. Planning is futuristic as it seeks to meet future events effectively to the best advantage of an organization. Planning is therefore called a forward-looking function. Number 6. Planning involves decision making as it involves rational thinking to choose the best alternative among the various available alternatives in order to achieve the desired goals efficiently and effectively. And number 7. Planning is a mental exercise as it is based on intellectual thinking involving foresight, visualization, and judgment rather than guesswork. Nature of planning process. The complex and comprehensive nature of planning makes it a function with several characteristics. Planning may have these different characteristics. Number 1. A cognitive process. The planning process is highly intellectual and thus is cognitive. This managerial function is about thinking with creativity to utilize existing available resources for available opportunity. An organization that lacks in studying today's opportunity and do not reap its benefit profitability in time may take the opportunity into problem tomorrow. Planning for managers involves functions such as what, how, when, and by whom is to be done. An organization that makes a timely decision today with careful thinking need not worry for the future. Such an organization can effectively establish equilibrium between the external environment and internal environment. Planning with critical thinking and a high level of cognition ensures effective decision making. Number 2. Planning versus forecasting. Many times, planning and forecasting seem to be similar to each other. Though they are common to each other to some extent, yet they hold a greater degree of differences. Forecasting refers to what is expected to happen if there are no ways to escape, whereas planning is about what one wants to happen. Forecasting leads to planning. For example, a threat to natural resources may encourage people and nation to plan for the conservation of natural resources. Though planning involves evaluation, assessments, estimates, and calculations, yet these are made in the presence of available resources, time and goals and objectives of natural resources. Apart from these, planning is a continuous process of assessment and evaluation to find the deviations and making corrections thereafter. In the modern decade, planning is highly complex and data-driven and involves various data mining and analytics. Number 3. Planning is the accomplishment of group objectives. An organization operates with the joint efforts of various individuals with varied personality, skills, attitudes, learning, and motivation. These varied individuals with varied beliefs and personality makes a cohesive group that operates harmoniously to achieve organizational goals. Thus, planning involves achieving the objective of individual, keeping group and organizational objectives in mind. Number 4. The choice between alternatives. Modern business environment is highly dynamic and changes at a rapid pace. The plan and procedure that used to be effective in past tend to be obsolete and redundant in the present scenario with a completely new and different business environment. Similarly, the presently available resources may not be available tomorrow or may not fulfill the future new demands. Thus, planning involves judicious adjustments and adaptation in resources to grab the emerging business opportunities. The top management generally follow 3 steps of decision making: the decision about the objective of business, profitability, growth, consumer satisfaction, etc. The next, it focuses on selecting the strategy to achieve these objectives, followed by operational goals. Number 5. Planning is all-pervasive. Planning as a management function is so imperative that it pervades in all managerial functions for a goal-oriented organization. It would be wrong to state that planning is just a first step. Rather, it is the step that influences each managerial function, be it organizing or controlling. Moreover, it is wrong to quote that planning is a task performed by top-level management only, though they devote considerable time and discussion in the planning process. Yet, the role of the middle and lower level of management at their respective activities cannot be neglected to draw a successful, effective plan. Several of planning requires managers at a different level. The first step in determining the objective involves top management. But other following steps like operationalization of plan may require the involvement of middle and lower level as well. Involvement of people in planning process belonging to different levels in the organization can significantly boost their motivation level. Number 6. Planning is flexible. For an organization to be successful, it is crucial to establish synergies between opportunity and available resources. Forecasting the growth opportunity and adapting the resources accordingly does provide a competitive advantage to an organization. This requires careful identification of KSAs of people, man, material, and money to take advantage of the available opportunity. Since the business environment is prone to suffer from uncertainty and dynamism, alteration in a mix of materials and plans is very essential to survive and suit the change. Number 7. Planning is the integrated process. With the establishment of various policies, programs, and procedures, an organization established organization objectives that it aims to achieve under the planning process. When the organization establish such objective and implement the interventions, it may encounter a difference of opinion among personnel of organization, particularly from those who are involved in the planning process. For example, where a sales manager may look for various products to satisfy the needs of the consumer and to grab more market share, production managers may look for keeping the production simple with least standardization. Effective planning takes care of these conflicting interests and tries to maximize the organization interest with the least cost of an individual's interest. Steps involved in planning process. The complex and systematic process of planning involves certain basic logical steps to be followed. They are: Number 1. Setting up of organizational objectives. The first and foremost objective of an organization establishes various objectives and goals that an organization strives to achieve. Objectives determine the various activities and direction of efforts. For an effective planning function, objectives need to be stated clearly and must be precise and unambiguous. Unclear and ambiguous objectives lead to chaos and wastages. Objectives set under the planning process can be for the entire organization, for each department, units, and employees. It can be short-term as well as long-term based on the organization's desire to achieve. Apart from objectives being clear, precise, and ambiguous, they must be practical, feasible, and achievable as well as realistic. For example, for a manufacturing company, reducing production hour can be an objective that can be achieved to reduce processing timing at every step. For an objective to be clear and realistic, it should be stated in quantitative terms. For example, the number of working hours, the percentage increase in sales or production, the wage is given to laborers, etc. Objectives stated in qualitative terms can be optimistic but not precise, and hence leads to confusion. Number 2. Developing planning premises. Planning is about predicting the uncertain future to carry out the business activities. To forecast the future, certain assumptions about the future need to be made by the planning managers. These assumptions serve as the base to create a premise for developing a plan of action. This is called planning premises. These assumptions are made in the form of forecast. Forecasting is the technique of gathering information for developing planning premises. In general business parlance, enterprises forecast the demand for a product, inflation prediction, tax regime, interest rates, government interventions, etc. Thus, to develop an effective plan, accurate forecasting is essential. Where external forecasting is necessary and complex to be made, internal forecasting also plays a crucial role in the planning process. Internal forecasting, such as trade relations, capital investment policy, and management philosophy significantly influences forecasting and thus the planning process. Number 3. Identification of alternative course of action. As objective setting and making of assumptions is done, various alternative courses of actions are identified to achieve those objectives. This step involves the identification of a maximum number of alternatives based on the type of project. An important project requires detailed and comprehensive identification of alternatives than the general one. A detailed statement of alternatives is presented amongst the members of the organization to be discussed about the selection of the alternatives. Number 4. Evaluating alternative course of action. After identification of various alternative courses of actions, each action is examined in terms of their pros and cons. The positive and negative aspect of each course of action is evaluated concerning the objectives of an organization. For the selection of course of action, the cost and benefits, feasibility, and practicability is examined. For a financial plan of an organization, the risk return of the project is taken into consideration. The plan with higher risk tends to have higher profit earning and is evaluated in terms of EPS, earnings, taxes, dividends, and interest. Number 5. Selection of an alternative. At this point, the final decision is taken. The best plan in terms of maximum benefits and the minimum cost is adopted for implementation. The plan chosen would be feasible, profitable, and tend to yield higher profits and the least cost. Various plans are selected after careful investigation and statistical calculation, but many a times subjectivity in terms of managers' experience, knowledge, and judgment are considered in selecting the best alternative. When an organization looks for long-term benefits and number of objectives, a combination of various plans may be selected. Number 6. Implementation of the plan. At this stage, various other managerial functions come into the picture as the best selected plan is implemented. In this stage, the implementation of the action takes place, that is, doing what is required. For a production department, an objective is to increase production more than labor. Then, organization may implement a plan that involves more investments in machinery. Number 7. Follow-up of action. This is the crucial stage as it involves seeing whether selected and implemented plan is working as per plans or not. This stage is essential and requires close monitoring to assess deviation in selection and implementation and to achieve desired objectives. Why planning is necessary? The fast-changing business environment creates the need for development and planning. An organization that adopts a lackadaisical approach in the identification of environmental change would surely struggle to survive and grow. There are many points that show how planning is an important management function. Number 1. Ensures selection of optimum goals. Planning is the cognitive and intellectual process of selecting the best course of action from various available alternatives. It is also about selecting one course of action that has sound chances of being profitable, feasible, achievable, and economical, and reject the other courses of actions that are not so feasible and profitable. The selected course of action ensures the overall growth of an organization, keeping in mind the organizational limitations in terms of resources, time limit, objectives, and strategies. In overall development of the organization, it is necessary to optimize the overall operation of the organization and sub-optimization of other departments. Number 2, manages complexities. A single organization is a function of the heterogeneous group of human resources who possess different KSA, values, belief, culture, and motivation levels. In such heterogeneous working environment, it is obvious to have a disharmony in terms of organizational and individual interest. An effective plan of organization is a way to create a common interest among individuals of an organization who works together towards the accomplishment of organizational goals in which they have shared common goals too. Thus, planning is a way towards goal-directing activity. Number 3, survive environmental change. The business environment witnessed tremendous change now and then. From a conservative business model to democratic global business scenario has left the business houses to keep themselves updated to meet changing demands with changing environment. Change in demand, change in technologies, fashion, preferences, social values significantly affect the organizational normal course of operation. Management must strive to grab the opportunity to take advantage of the changed situation by adapting and adjusting its inputs to meet new demand and preferences of customers. Proper, scientific, and systematic planning helps to survive in the turbulent situation created out of environmental change. Number 4, protection from failure. Unpredictable change in consumers' taste and preferences, cutthroat competition, rapid technological change, economic slowdown, political disturbances significantly affect the nation and so business houses. Sometimes these changes are so adverse that they lead to complete business failure. However, many organizations could not survive these radical changes due to ineffective planning and faulty decision making. It cannot be denied that planning cannot eliminate all business failures, but it can surely help in identification and evaluation of business opportunities and threats and examining the various course of actions thereafter. Number 5. Unity of action. Since the organization works with joint efforts of an individual with different KSAs, thus their harmonious working is necessary towards accomplishment of organizational goals. This is possible with efficient planning that provides stake to employees to work jointly for organizational success. Number 6. Supports control and coordination. Planning function supports other management functions such as control and coordination. What, when, how, and by whom a function is to be performed, all these are planned and worked out well in advance. This helps in easy and timely performance appraisal and finding the deviation thereof. In the absence of planning, neither the performance would be of quality nor can the standard of performance be established effectively. This will lead to poor performance, delay in completion of tasks, wastages, chaos, and ultimately control and coordination would suffer. Proper planning can ensure establishment performance standards scientifically and systematically, timely and effective performance measurement, timely identification and elimination of deviations, and thus harmonious function at the workplace. Number 7. Planning promotes innovative ideas. It is clear that planning selects the best alternative out of the many available. All these alternatives do not come to the manager on their own, but they have to be discovered. While making such an effort of discovery, many new ideas emerge and they are studied intensively in order to determine the best out of them. In this way, planning imparts a real power of thinking in the managers. It leads to the birth of innovative and creative ideas. For example, a company wants to expand its business. This idea leads to the beginning of the planning activity in the mind of the manager. And number 8, planning facilitates decision making. Decision making means the process of taking decisions. Under it, a variety of alternatives are discovered and the best alternative is chosen. The planning sets the target for decision making. It also lays down the criteria for evaluating courses of action. In this way, planning facilitates decision making. Limitations. Though planning is the first and foremost managerial function, still it is indulged in various negative connotation and limitations. These limitations are: number 1, uncertainty. Planning function prepares policies and procedures for future and set goals to be achieved in future. Owing to the uncertain nature of the future, planning function tends to be ineffective as nothing can be assessed about future with surety. So planning is prone to failure many times. As planning is about the future course of action can only be based on anticipation, assumptions, speculations, and probabilities. The management sets the goal to achieve, prepares a plan to achieve, and that runs with the risk of failure. Though data analysis and statistics have made the planning accurate and effective, yet its 100% success can never be ensured. Number 2. Planning is a cognitive function. Planning, being the cognitive and intellectual function, requires serious attention, time, and expertise to plan and make decisions. These require maximum mental involvement and time. Managers who are always grappling with day-to-day operational problems could not devote much attention and time on planning. Many organizations keep planning function at a back seat as it is required only when any adverse change is observed. Thus, the effect of planning will be observed in a long time. Therefore, focus on the present problem is necessary than the problem of the future. Third is abstraction. As discussed, planning is about predicting future. It involves dealing with vague alternatives. It addresses a question like what if. Since it is a function of assumptions, estimation, guesswork, and speculation, planning works in abstraction with nothing hard and fast and concrete. Fourth is rigidity. Setting up of objectives, choosing a course of action to be implemented to achieve those objectives makes the planning rigid enough to deviate from the stated path. Work for an uncertain future with abstraction and speculation through predetermined goals and course of action makes planning function inefficient and ineffective many a times. Plans, procedures, and practices with predetermined goals and objectives and already stated course of action is deterrent to creativity and innovation. It leaves no room for freedom at work and makes an organization bureaucratic many a times. Thus, planning function is criticized due to its rigidity. And number 5, costly affair. Planning is an expensive function both in terms of time and money. It requires a huge outlay to assess and estimate information from within and outside the organization. These require an investment of time with serious mental and cognitive devotion. Since it is an intellectual function, it requires experts to assess, evaluate a problem, and suggesting a solution thereafter. Many times, business organizations resort to expert houses offering planning functions from data extraction to data analysis to policy formation. These outside experts cause huge cost to an organization. Benefits from organizational perspective. Number 1. Gives an organization a sense of direction. Without plans and goals, organizations merely react to daily occurrences without considering what will happen in the long run. For example, the solution that makes sense in the short term doesn't always make sense in the long term. Plans avoid this drift situation and ensure that short-range efforts will support and harmonize with future goals. Number 2. Focuses attention on objectives and results. Plans keep the people who carry them out focused on the anticipated results. In addition, keeping sight of the goal also motivates employees. Number 3. Establishes a basis for teamwork. Diverse groups cannot effectively cooperate in joint projects without an integrated plan. Examples are numerous. Plumbers, carpenters, and electricians cannot build a house without blueprints. In addition, military activities require the coordination of Army, Navy, and Air Force units. Number 4. Helps anticipate problems and cope with change. When management plans, it can help forecast future problems and make any necessary changes upfront to avoid them. Of course, surprises such as the 1973 quadrupling of oil prices can always catch an organization short, but many changes are easier to forecast. Planning for these potential problems helps to minimize mistakes and reduce the surprises that inevitably occur. Number 5. Provides guidance for decision making. Decisions are future oriented. If management doesn't have any plans for the future, they will have few guidelines for making current decisions. If a company knows that it wants to introduce a new product 3 years in the future, its management must be mindful of the decisions they make now. Plans help both managers and employees keep their eyes on the big picture. And number 6. Serves as a prerequisite to employing all other management functions. Planning is primary because without knowing what an organization wants to accomplish, management can't intelligently undertake any of the other basic managerial activities, which are organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling.
You were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies, IGNOU, for MBA program. Course code MMPC-001, Management Functions and Organizational Processes. Course Coordinator, Professor Srilata, School of Management Studies, IGNOU. Voice over by Harpreet Kaur. Edited by Tarannum Jahan. Program assisted by Jagbandhu Jana. Program produced by Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.